This week on the Honor Roll podcast, we will be talking to Dr. Matt King, Megan Braunstein, and honor student Nora Wolfgang about one of the United States' most prestigious honor societies, Phi Beta Kappa. All that and more coming up next. Hey Honors Bowls, welcome to the Honor Roll podcast, the flagship podcast of the Judy Genshaft Honors College Podcast Network. I am your host, Fabiana, Requena, a third-year student studying marketing and business analytics at the University of South Florida and a member of the Honors College. As always, we like to start the podcast off with one big question. So my question this week is, what's your best networking tip? Personally, I would say to do your research. If you're going to a networking event, make sure you know who's going to be there before you actually get there. And on another note, kind of establishing a shared connection or finding a way to be memorable with somebody that you meet, like an employer or recruiter. So simply just like something that you can bond over, I think that can go a really long way. Also, overall, just looking for these kinds of events. I know that USF has a lot to offer, so just looking out for your email or just like keeping up on Instagram. I think these are really good ways to get involved. Which leads us to the discussion today with members of Honor Society Phi Beta Kappa, who will share how they became a part of PBK, what it is, why it's important, and how they got invited. Stay tuned.
My name is Benjamin Young. I'm a faculty member at the Judy Genshaft Honors College. It's hard to name just one good resource for the Honors College students. They've got an incredible advising team supporting them. They've got an incredible faculty who are really interested in their long-term success and them as a person. They have the opportunity for study abroad, which I think is so crucial to developing a well-rounded set of skills and ways of thinking about yourself and your relationship with the world.
Thank you all so much for joining us here today on the podcast. Can you each introduce yourselves and share your role within USF and your connection to Phi Beta Kappa?
So my name is Matt King. I'm a professor in the history department, and within PBK, I am the historian chapter officer, which I've been in since 2018-2019. My main duty is to give a speech about the history of PBK at the annual induction ceremony, and I'm also the webmaster.
Hi, my name is Megan Braunstein. I'm an academic advisor in the Judy Genshaft Honors College. I'm also the chapter secretary for our USF chapter of Phi Beta Kappa, and I've been doing that for the past 3 years now. So I help coordinate the committee who taps all the students for induction. I also help communicate with the students and the members of our chapter, and I help plan the induction ceremony every spring.
Hi, my name's Nora. I'm currently a senior at USF. I'm majoring in biomedical anthropology. I'm pre-med, and I was just recently inducted into PBK this past spring.
It's so nice to have you guys here. And to kick things off, could you explain what PBK is, how it started, and a little bit about its history here at USF?
I think that's very much my purview.
Yeah.
So Phi Beta Kappa predates the existence of USF by several hundred years almost. Its first meeting took place on December 5th, 1776 at William and Mary, the college, in which a group of young men decided to form a secret society founded by their motto, love of learning is the guide of life, which is where we get the Phi Beta Kappa, which is short for the Greek Philosophia Biou Kubernetes. They decided they wanted to create a society in which they could cultivate knowledge outside of the classes that they took. And you can see in their early meeting minutes the kind of rhetoric around it. Here's one example. Here you are to indulge in matters of speculation, that freedom of inquiry that ever dispels the clouds of falsehood by the radiant sunshine of truth. So to, continue that kind of rhetoric, the loam sown by these young men has since blossomed into the live oaks of southern Florida and across the United States, where there's about 293, I think, chapters of the society that's grown since, the American, not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. And USF is one of the most recent chapters, which we received in the academic year 2018-2019 after, I think, close to a decade of attempts. This is part of USF's trajectory from being kind of a local commuter school to aspiring to kind of that preeminent state status.
Of course. Thank you for sharing all that foundational knowledge. I think it's really important for students to understand all those things. So as members, what does being a part of a prestigious honor society like this one mean to you personally?
Well, I think it means a lot of things. One of the first things that I think of is, not only academic accomplishment, but also, for me, it was a goal of mine to be inducted into Phi Beta Kappa, and I was inducted during my undergraduate years as a junior. So it was a marker for me that not only had I achieved academically, but that also, as Matt mentioned, it's, broad kind of liberal arts. So I was exposing myself to learning for learning's sake, trying all kinds of different subjects. And at the end of the day, that was what I really wanted out of my college experience. So, being tapped for Phi Beta Kappa meant that not only was I a well-rounded student, but also a high achiever academically. So that was what motivated me to pursue Phi Beta Kappa.
Yeah, and I'll tap into that too. I had a very similar experience to Megan. I also joined my junior year, and I also had been trying to get into it after hearing about it from Megan my freshman year. And what it means to me is I'm definitely the type where if I'm committing to something, I want to be like among the best at it. And I think in order to do that, you have to surround yourself with the best people. And I think Phi Beta Kappa is definitely the way to do that. You really just expand your network and have all of these options that can improve you both as a person and as an academic.
There are a lot of predatory honor societies out there. And as an undergraduate, even from 2008 to 2012, I was getting these ones from choose a combination of 3 Greek letters. You should join this, right? But when I got Phi Beta Kappas, I was like, I have heard of this before. And so I'd ask my parents, what is this? And they're like, you should actually be in this. Like, this is worth it for you because it's the oldest, the most prestigious honor society in the U.S. And it could open doors beyond just being a useful line on any CV or resume.
Of course. I know. I get those my email inbox is flooded with those random honor societies that just want you to pay money. Could you walk us through how someone becomes a member of PBK and what are the requirements to be invited?
Sure. So essentially, you are invited to join Phi Beta Kappa. So students, if you're thinking about trying to get an invitation, there are certain things that you can do actively. First and foremost, you should have a major in either the College of Arts and Sciences or the College of the Arts. Those are the 2 departments that will qualify you for PBK as a liberal arts student. The second is GPA. So you should have a GPA of 3.6 or higher. And then there's certain courses that you have to take. So for example, you have to take 2 college level math courses, and you also have to have at least intermediate 2 or level 4 of a foreign language on your transcript. Things like AP, IB, or dual enrollment credits do count, but USF residency also matters. You have to have taken at least 45 credits here at the University of South Florida to be able to qualify for PBK. So those are just kind of the minimum criteria, but our committee who does overview of these transcripts takes a look to see, are the students really exploring just beyond the minimum general education requirements and the minimum major requirements? Are students double majoring? Are students majoring and minoring? Any combination of these things, including honors courses, for example, they help the committee understand, okay, this student is taking every possible opportunity to really explore all of the different fields that are out there that are offered at USF. And so those students that really go above and beyond are the ones that are typically invited to join PBK.
Yeah, there's a committee that meets, the Committee of Members in Course, COMIC, as it's called, that reviews hundreds of transcripts each year to determine who is appropriate to induct into Phi Beta Kappa. And the way that works is that Megan bugs the registrar with this list of requirements that is based on what she just said. It's like they have to have this minimum GPA, they have to have these majors, and that's our starting pool. And then from that, we cull it based on especially kind of breadth of academic experience, where, if we see someone who has a high GPA, but they've never really taken anything outside of the world of biomed, we'll say, well, are they really embodying this kind of pursuit of knowledge that we want to see in Phi Beta Kappa? Versus the person whose grades are maybe a little lower, but they're a biomed major with minors in both music and Japanese, something like that. Where we're like, wow, this shows pursuit outside of a singular major.
Right. And Nora, as a student, can you kind of share a little bit about like what kind of classes you're taking? I know you said your major and you're taking classes outside of that. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I definitely came into college and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I came in with a criminology major, and that is in the behavioral sciences college. So that means I wouldn't have been able to join PBK. But I really did, I think, just emphasize that like love for learning and growth and stuff like that. And I tried to take as many courses as I could. Actually, what really got me out there was being through the honors college. I got to study abroad, and I got to go to London, and I met some of my best friends there, and I took a philosophy course and a course on serial killers, actually, which was really interesting. And then I got to go to Romania after my sophomore year, and that was really where I found my niche, which was within osteology, which not a ton of people know about. But that's where I started exploring biomedical anthropology, which is my major, and I have a criminology minor. And even with the honors college, I got to take courses like performance art, and seminar in ethics was really interesting. So not only was I getting all of those major classes that really helped form my niche and where I want to go into med school and beyond, but I also was getting to like really tap into my creative side and my philosophical sides as well, which I think really that's what PBK emphasizes, is that whole holistic aspect of learning. And I'm really glad that I got to go through the honors college and get all of that different topics that I can explore.
Definitely, yeah. As somebody who's dual degreeing in like 2 business degrees, I think that the honors college is like a great way to take classes that I typically wouldn't have the opportunity to. And I'm someone who's really passionate about history, let's say. So I got to do something in that where I typically wouldn't have gotten to. Could you share what kind of opportunities PBK opens up for you, either academically, professionally, or personally?
So I can start with that. I think one of the things, academically that PBK did for me, I'm pursuing my PhD in international education from the University of Minnesota, and having PBK on my resume automatically qualified me and helped me become a very serious candidate for, postgraduate education or post, master's education. And, being surrounded by people who like-mindedly want to pursue lifelong learning, that motivated me even further to kind of pursue further education. Professionally, I would say that having PBK on my resume certainly helped me get connected here at USF. I wouldn't have met Matt if it were not for PBK. Having PBK on my resume, Dean Adams kind of recognized me in a specific way and then kind of championed me to become the secretary of the chapter here, which is offering me all kinds of development. And I even got to go to Baltimore for the Phi Beta Kappa triennial conference that happens every 3 years. So got to meet all kinds of people, from all over the country that are involved in Phi Beta Kappa. And so expanded my professional network that way. So there's a lot of different opportunities, both academically, professionally, and then, personally, it's just rewarding to, be surrounded by people or in touch with people who have, like-minded pursuits as me and, kind of get my nerdiness of wanting to pursue further education and, can share their insights on what their own PhD journeys were like and keep me motivated, because dissertation proposal, the struggle is real for sure.
I think it's hard to quantify in a lot of ways what it does for you, in the sense that like it's a line on your resume and CV. And it's not like most employers walk line through your resume or CV with you to say, like, this is the defining factor for whether or not you're accepted or employed. But it is an item on these documents that does stand out to a lot of employers, especially those who are in Phi Beta Kappa. So in that sense, it provides a potential leg up, even if it's hard to quantify that. And then there's the very real, like, networking things that Megan just talked about.
Yeah, I think it's a signal more than anything else, right? That you are a really well-rounded person, you have good critical thinking skills, and that translates into a lot of, proficiency on the job once you're actually in the world of work. Good point.
Yeah, and I'll say from a student's perspective, they have so many resources that are just available. Since I did recently join, I haven't been able to really utilize a lot of those yet. But they are so widespread, and they have networking options, and they have resume building workshops and everything like that that'll make you as a student a lot more prepared for your future so you can get to that spot.
Yeah, and have you had the chance to connect with any other PBK members from like other universities, and how has it kind of like expanded your network in that way?
So I mentioned that I did at the triennial.
Yeah.
I was meeting people from, the Northeast, the Midwest, other Southern institutions, other state of Florida institutions. And, everybody was really warm and friendly. And particularly other state of Florida institutions really kind of expressed wanting to work together and maybe, kind of have some larger discourse about, things going on in the state. Or, co-host events together. So that's really promising. And then, just in general too, like when I met these people at the triennial, like we were just talking about things that we have in common with each other, and we all love trivia. So I got invited to an online trivia league, and I get to kind of, stay in touch with these people that I met at the conference in kind of that fun way as well. So I've also done some volunteer work for our Tampa Alumni PBK Association. Our local chapter raises funds and gives scholarships out to students who are entering college. And so I volunteered on that scholarship review committee one year to, review applications and donate scholarship money to students in need in the area. So I got to meet some really, really interesting people through that as well. Powerful people in the Tampa Bay area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was inducted to the University of Washington, and when I came to USF, essentially there was a cold call email saying, if you were in Phi Beta Kappa, any interest in helping out with this new chapter that's forming, and I volunteered for that, and it's since provided me with a lot of service opportunities to the university, which is part of what professors are paid for. It's provided me with like valuable connections in the Honors College, Megan, Dean Adams, and others, and so it's been rewarding in that sense for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And for Professor King and Megan, how has PBK kind of impacted your life after graduation and just entering the workforce?
I would say that for me, having Phi Beta Kappa on my resume made a big difference in terms of when I was applying for grad programs, when I was applying for my master's program, not a lot of students in higher ed have PBK on their resume. So that was a really cool thing for me, a little feather in my cap for sure. And then professionally, having PBK, on my wall, I have my certificate framed and hanging on the wall in my office, has really opened up a really cool opportunity for me to have conversations with students. It ends up being a conversation piece, right? Everybody says, oh, what's that? And then when I get to explain what Phi Beta Kappa is and how I got in, it allows my students to express an interest in it. And then we can open up new doors together of conversations of like, all right, well, let's plan a second major or let's plan for foreign language. And then, I can then further deepen my relationship with them because we've identified a particular goal that they have, and it's a very achievable one.
Yeah, I think you have a really unique perspective in that you are an academic advisor, so you have that opportunity to be there for students and maybe see like potential in them. Is that something that you like push students to do? Like,
I try to.
Yeah.
Definitely all of my social science students that are in my caseload, and especially people who are kind of on the fence about foreign language. I know that that's a tripping point for a lot of my students. If they come in with AP credit, or if they've, taken 1 and 2 and they're kind of on the fence about 3 and 4, I always kind of try to bring up, no, like, please pursue 3 and 4 because there's this very prestigious honor society. See my certificate up there on the wall. And then, once I explain that they're generally in a good spot, all we need to do is just kind of meet these minimum criteria, and then we can think through bigger picture what PBK does for you. Usually people are on board after that.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Hammond. I am a senior in biomedical sciences. If you're thinking about joining the Judy Genshaft Honors College, I'd say do it 100%. There's so many fun opportunities, both socially to make friends and academically, and bringing in careers and lived experience and helping the community around you.
From the committee's perspective on transcripts, one of the big things we look at is breadth, but the other is language. And that's one of the biggest kind of ruling out factors. And beyond kind of taking an intermediate course in a language, just learning a language unlocks new ways to see the world, because our world and our internal monologues are shaped by the language in which we think. So learning to think and see the world in a new language is just, I think, core to the ideas of what Phi Beta Kappa is trying to do.
I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit and talk about how being at PBK has enriched your experience here at USF. And for Nora, your university experience. I know this is something very new for you, but you can talk about anything very recent.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is very new to me, and I haven't had the opportunity to really explore all of those options. But I will say that it is apparent and it is present. And especially as I start my applications for grad school and med school, I'll definitely be looking into those options here at USF. I know sometimes public speakers come and talk, or like I said, resume workshops and stuff like that, which is very beneficial because I need all the help I can get. But I also can't give too much insight into that because I haven't had the opportunity to get too involved yet.
We'll probably be calling upon you to volunteer at the induction ceremony in the spring.
I can do that.
I know, Nora mentioned visiting speakers, and I think that that's kind of a really important thing that we do. Phi Beta Kappa has a visiting scholars program, and it's almost like an exchange network in the sense that there are faculty members from institutions that have PBK chapters and who might be PBK members themselves. And, they travel across the country. PBK establishes kind of this system where, last year we had a scholar come from Boston College to USF and talk about the research that they were doing. And so similar things are happening across the country, and it's a really interesting way of doing discourse about, what's going on in the world and how, people's different lenses kind of impact the perception of that. So,
yeah, I think it was 2 years ago that there was a scholar from Vanderbilt who is also a advisor to Elizabeth Warren, who gave a talk about ways to reform the Supreme Court, for example. And that I just remember being a engaging and interesting conversation.
Yeah, that was actually going to be my next question, which was which one was the most engaging presentation?
Yeah, I'd go for that one.
Yeah,
too.
that one too.
Absolutely.
but Matt and I are of similar minds.
Yeah.
All right. And then what role do you see PBK playing in the larger community here at USF?
I think that is a really interesting question because PBK is trying to expand its reach throughout the USF community. I think we're getting better at that as we've inducted more students. But I think something that, we want to do as an organization, PBK, not only chapter at USF, but nationally, is advocate for the liberal arts and sciences in kind of being at the forefront of higher education. And so I know that that's really important here at USF. I think USF, among its students, at least some of mine, I know when, I have a particularly niche population of business and social science students in the Honors College, but a lot of my students come to me and say, gosh, we're so STEM heavy here at USF. And so PBK being here has really carved out kind of a niche and sort of represented that, hey, the liberal arts and sciences are important too. And so I think that that's kind of one of the major roles that the Phi Beta Kappa chapter here at USF can play.
Yeah, I think in general, it's a new chapter, relatively speaking. It was founded in 2018, 2019. There were 2 years of COVID that stifled any growth. But now I think there's room for expansion, especially with the Humanities Institute and other liberal arts themed organizations around campus to try to encourage the cultivation of that kind of knowledge on campus. I would also be interested in seeing even students within PBK interact even more on campus, because there's so many opportunities at the national level or at the Florida level. But I know even for my induction ceremony, I saw all of these people that I had briefly met through honors activities or stuff like that. But even in that room, there was someone going to Harvard for something I was interested in and things like that, where you can even network within your grade and stuff like that. And so I would be interested in meeting more of the inductees and getting involved in that way.
Absolutely. Are there any PBK events that you're looking forward to here at USF?
Well, I always look forward to the induction ceremony in the spring. This is becoming an annual tradition now, where we've invited all of the students. They've accepted their invitations, and then faculty members, family members, even, President Emerita Genshaft and her husband, Mr. Greenbaum, always come. And I, as chapter secretary, get to read everybody's names, and they cross the stage and do the special secret handshake for PBK, super secret, with Dean Adams. That always warms my heart. I think that that's like a really wonderful moment. And it, is a good crystallization of like all the hard work and energy and dedication that the students have put into kind of becoming a really well-rounded scholar. And so, yeah, induction's my favorite event of the year always.
For students who might be considering joining or fulfilling those requirements for Phi Beta Kappa, what kind of advice would you offer them?
I would say, for my personal experience, it really was that emphasis of the love of learning and experiencing all that you can in your undergraduate experience. Like Megan touched on, the language is probably the hardest part to get down because you do need those like 4 semesters, I guess. And so for me, it was definitely a challenge because I did 2 semesters, which was required for my degree, but then I had to keep going after that. And so meeting with your advisor, taking classes that you genuinely enjoy and aren't just checking off a box on your degree, I think was the most important thing for me. And just making sure that that love of learning is what motivates you in your academic decisions rather than just getting your degree complete.
I would also say starting to think about it early and goal setting early. Depending on the amount of credits that students walk in with, you could have somewhere between typically 3 and 4 years at USF. And so it's not to say that it's difficult. If you put your mind to it, you can absolutely do it. But like Nora mentioned, there's a lot of degree programs that are pretty rigid or have lots of requirements. And so if you are interested in joining Phi Beta Kappa, speak up with your advisor as soon as possible, because the sooner that we know that that's a goal of yours, the better a job that we can do to keep track of all of the eligibility requirements, plan to build those into your schedule accordingly without kind of at the last minute just throwing everything together and hoping for the best. Like, I would much rather know that that's a goal that a student has sooner rather than later, so that way I can do a much more effective job of, keeping them on track to be able to achieve that goal.
Yeah, in some ways, there is a tension between the goals of Phi Beta Kappa and the realities of being an undergraduate student at USF in 2024, in the sense that metrics drive decisions to get students through quickly, and there are financial implications there too, as well as career ones. But I think Phi Beta Kappa encourages the pursuit of learning, the exploration of learning, the questioning of why, we are undertaking these educational journeys and what it means about the society in which we live. And those don't necessarily translate into the X number of credits you need for a gen ed, right? And so if it's possible, if you're able to slow down and kind of consider the other classes and fields that you're not going to major in but could enrich your understanding of the world, I think that's kind of what I would encourage students to do to increase their odds of getting into Phi Beta Kappa. And doing that can also kind of soften the GPA requirements. We have some students who have 3.99 repeating GPAs and others who have really put themselves out there who are closer to, what do you think our lowest was, 3.7?
It was 3.65.
3.65, yeah. And that's built on, their willingness to explore and not just only take those classes that they know immediately are going to affect their major.
It sounds like Phi Beta Kappa really emphasizes this love of learning, like you were talking about, Nora. How do you cultivate that mindset, especially in your busy academic life and professional life?
Yeah, like I said earlier, the Honors College was the best way for me to pursue that. I'm the Honors College's #1 fan. It really has given me so many opportunities. The course that I took in London, it was technically a philosophy course, but it connected to my interests within medicine. And I got to find how those two overlapped and correlated and stuff like that. And I got to, like I said earlier, find my creative side. And I will say that it makes it easier that I did come in with a lot of credits beforehand. So I had that wiggle room to try out courses that were more interesting to me than anything else. But there is still, you always can take electives that are really just interesting to you. And I guess that's what I would encourage, exploring all types of fields and not just necessarily sticking to medicine if you're pre-med like me or anything like that.
I think for me, trying to model that behavior of love of learning is the guide of life, right? Because yes, I am a busy professional and I have a lot of commitments, not just during the workday, but also once I go home from work. And, I try to remember that every experience is a good one as long as I can learn something from it. And take that insight with me to move forward, make myself either a better or a more well-rounded person or, things like that. And I mean, I will admit that, as somebody who loved school and derived a lot of pleasure from, learning new things, like I think there's something innate in that, but that also keeps me motivated to pursue further study and, finish my doctoral program. There is a sense of accomplishment in being able to say, I learned this new skill, or I was able to, get an insight on this particular issue. And then, even further being able to discuss it with other people. I do get a good joy out of, nerding out with other people and talking about, whatever subject areas we're mutually interested in. So, trying to think about learning as not only a reward, but also a source of joy.
Yeah. And sorry, I'll also look at it because I did pretty much only come from the academic lens, but learning can be within so much more. And I really was only thinking about classes at first, but getting involved outside of school too, I think is so important to learning new things about yourself and about others and about society, whether that's volunteering or getting involved in clubs at USF or anything like that. I would say that's also how I figured out what I loved learning about, was just getting involved in the community and networking with people around me, and really just trial and error of seeing what I enjoy and seeing what actually has an impact within our community. Yeah.
And for me, I mean, I'm an academic, and so I have the immeasurably fortunate sort of task of doing research that hopefully cultivates knowledge if I'm doing it half okay, and tries to kind of explore the cultural depths of the world. And so I try to embrace that in my day-to-day as part of my job and, frankly, my identity. And then within classes, I try to cultivate that sort of lust for learning among my students by, sharing with them anecdotes, stories about the past, and the very flawed narratives on which we build our understanding of history, hopefully so that they question it and are more critical about kind of the narratives that they're given.
It sounds like you all have really found yourselves at home here and really found your community of people. To wrap up, I just wanted to ask what legacy or what you hope to leave behind for the future of PBK.
That's a question. I will say, for me as chapter secretary, I think one of the things that I hope to do is, as I mentioned earlier, we have this induction ceremony that we've started to establish some traditions here at USF. And so I really hope that we can further cement those traditions. I probably won't be chapter secretary forever. And so whoever comes next, can kind of take that and run with it. And I know that Nora mentioned earlier in the conversation that, she just got to meet some of the other PBK members in passing at induction. And so, on the fly now, taking that feedback from her, I hope that maybe we can do better at, getting the students to build that community with each other within the PBK organization. I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
I kind of approach this from the academic side, which is I hope that Phi Beta Kappa is one of a handful of organizations at USF that, stands for academic freedom and the liberal arts, whether they are under attack or not.
Well, thank you so much all for joining us here on the podcast. It's been great to have you here and learn a little bit more about PBK.
Thank you so much.
And we're back in the studio. It was so nice to have Dr. King, Megan, and Nora here to talk to us about their experience in PBK. And it's nice to see a student perspective, but also how it can look like after graduation. So how Megan and Dr. King have kind of continued to stay involved and are helping students who want to fulfill the requirements to become a part of PBK. I think it's a really good opportunity, and it sounds like it's helping Nora a lot getting into like grad schools or med school applications. So it's great to hear about all of that. If you'd like to learn more about Phi Beta Kappa and the requirements, make sure to check out the USF website or talk to your academic advisor. And with that said, don't forget to check the Honor Roll newsletter and our website at usf.edu/honors for all upcoming events, updates, and news. That'll do it for this week's episode. The Honor Roll podcast is recorded in the Judy Genshaft Honors College at the University of South Florida Tampa campus. Production assistance is provided by honor student Sandra Napolitano. Thank you all so much for listening, and please do not forget to rate and review our podcast as we appreciate your feedback. Tune in next week where we hear more honor stories and talk to more members of the Judy Genshaft Honors College. Until next time,
Go Bulls!